Hello, everybody, and welcome to the TFDi Design MD-11, I guess, question and answer stream, or kind of dev update / maybe dev stream / kind of whatever we end up going into today. I've got a couple of other people here helping me today. I'll let them introduce themselves.
Okay.
Don't all go at once.
You first, Fabio.
It will be a very popular topic of discussion today. I get that impression.
Yeah. So I'm Luke. I'm the community manager. I'll be acting almost as a question master. So I'll be reading your questions out and direct them to the correct people.
Good.
And
Yep, there you
I'm
go.
Jonne. I am I make displays for the MD-11, and I'm also in quality assurance, so I do a lot of testing.
So just a little bit over the last couple of weeks as we've been working on stuff, this team has been combing over the manuals in this plane. We will have discussions that involve 2, 3, 4 of us sometimes, where we're all reading the manual trying to figure out what the heck MD was talking about. We've had a few of those, especially with the fuel. But we'll get into that. I'm sure we've got plenty of time. And of course, I realized I said hello, but I should introduce myself. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Colin. I'm the CEO of Invernix / TFDi. Again, like Fabio said, kind of whatever you want to call us. I'm programming a lot of the core systems and auto flight on the MD-11. That's my main responsibility. Of course, I oversee the project as well, but my contribution is definitely in ones and zeros. So with that, let's go ahead and open up the questions. My screen is sharing right now, Fabio, right? On the stream. Hello? Did I drop?
Oh dear.
Okay, this is not so. Fabio, are you there? Yeah, okay, so you guys can hear us. If he's not able to respond, odds are the stream is down on Twitch as well. So it may take us just a second here to get our technical difficulties resolved. No, we cannot hear
let me
you.
ping Colin. Let me ping Colin. Yeah.
No, I can hear you, Fabio.
Wait, you can't hear me?
We can hear you, yes. But can you hear us?
But I can't hear Fabio.
Can you hear me, Colin?
Yes, I hear you. I heard
that's
Yona as well.
I hear Fabio.
I didn't hear Fabio.
Did you mute Fabio?
Hang on, I'm just going to leave and come back. Okay, trying again.
You know, I can hear you, Fabio, but that might be because I'm up here. Well, thank you for coming, everyone. Today, this is
There we go.
This is unfortunately more of a realistic view of the day-to-day activities than I would like.
yeah. I'm inviting him up to speak.
Okay, somebody in the chat said.
There we go.
Said that they can't hear. There we go.
Right.
Welcome back.
Trying
Right,
this again.
Can everybody hear Fabio?
Okay.
I guess I'll reintroduce myself then, seeing as that seemed to not work as intended. So I'm Fabio. I'm the technical team lead here at Invernix TFDi, whatever you want to call it, and I'll be mainly working on the supporting systems of the MD-11, which include the EFB and perhaps some of the ACARS system as well that goes into it.
Perfect.
Oh, Colin is streaming.
Awesome.
What?
Well, because we're in here, because you have my screen on the Twitch stream, I figured I'll stream it here as well. So if I'm talking about something I can point to, I can demonstrate here. Because there's, unlike previous streams where everything has been entirely in the host, we pretty much just have to talk only. Some of the stuff I can actually show you now, or at least point out what it's going to be or where it's going to be. So we'll use that as kind of a visual aid tool. All right, so let's go ahead and let's get right into the questions. I appreciate everybody hanging out with us here.
So our first question, it comes from Simbrief, baby. Okay, if I butcher your names, I'm really sorry, but some of you have interesting ones. The first one is, are we on track for a proper ACARS / AOC, and will it be dependent on smart cars still?
The ACARS, yeah, 100%. That's going to be on smart cars. It would be... it would be weird for us to develop a commercial level ACARS solution and then not integrate it with our own product. However, there are a lot of VAs that use it, so I would expect that it would be pretty compatible. And AOC, you'll have to forgive me here. What is that acronym short for?
That's the like airline operations center.
Yeah, I think it's air operations
okay.
company.
So if it's in the MCDU, that sort of stuff, there's very little reference for exactly how that's supposed to look, and sometimes it also varied by carrier. So things like that we probably won't do, given that whatever they needed in the real airlines operations center is probably not relevant to us in the simulator, and that a lot of it's custom anyway. We'll probably take some creative freedom there, or just omit it altogether. But the ACARS and other things, CPDLC, that stuff we are doing. So Luke, I'm going to leave it to you to shotgun questions at us.
Yep. Sorry, I just opened up the Twitch one. I got everything in dual audio. That was quite strange. So our next one is from Mayhem. Do we have a system or infrastructure for bug reporting, or will it be as simple as discussing it in Discord?
No, so we do. I'll give this one to Fabio, actually, because he's the one that sets it up.
Yeah, so much like smart cars, we found that the best way of tracking bugs, suggestions, and anything that kind of comes in is actually just through GitHub. It allows us to very neatly triage issues, and it also allows us to reference them when we're actually coding later on. So what's going to happen is very similar to how Smart Cars 3 bugs were reported, and that was very successful throughout the Smart Cars 3 beta period. And even up until now, it's still helping us out massively. So there is going to be a repo that you can submit issues to, and you can check if it's already been reported, so there aren't duplicates, etc.
And it'll ask you questions. That's the biggest thing for us, is that it's going to ask you if you say, I have an issue with the magenta line. It's going to ask you for really specific information about that type of report specifically to help us get to the bottom of it faster. We found that works relatively well in smart cars. We might even use smart cars to help us with testing too, depending on the way it works. So there's a lot of options there. But yeah, we'll have tools to help organize it and make it a little more effective. Definitely.
Okay. So next one is from Tissam. I'm sorry if I've got that wrong. Do you plan to publish the MD-11 for P3D and MSFS at the same time?
Yes. Ideally, they will come out all variants, both platforms at the same time. We have internally, we focus pretty much entirely on the GE passenger version, which is more or less done, not from a code perspective, but at least from an artwork perspective, it's pretty much done. So now we're going and finishing some of the tweaks that change for the cargo version or the Pratt & Whitney. The Pratt & Whitneys, they've been modeled already now. It's just kind of painting and that sort of stuff, as far as I know. But yes, as of right now, the goal is to have both kind of progress together, because at least the way the code is done, that's how it works. If we add a featured MSFS, it's pretty much available in P3D right away, and vice versa at this point.
And the next question, I'm surprised this wasn't the first one, is do we have a beta release date?
So the thing is, like, what does that mean? Because there's a couple of phases that, like, our testing will not be the standard, oh, it's in beta, it's released to everybody. Because of the collector's edition and the early access, there's kind of a different process we're going to go through. So what beta are they referring to? Is this a collector's edition, or is this early access, or just general release, or what beta are we looking for?
I'm not entirely sure, but so do you want to walk through the plan that we have for
Sure.
QA and so on?
I think that might help. That might solve some of the questions in advance as well, at least about release date and availability, just because I don't want to get caught up too much on just that today. So I'll kind of give the overall explanation. So this is the way that we're going to be doing the end of the development and the QA and the release strategy for the plane. Right now, as you have likely seen, we have the status page that says we're working toward a first flight state. That is not something we're releasing. That the first flight build that we're talking about here is not going out to the public. It is an indication of the general status of the project. We made that a kind of deadline for us to be able to stick a goalpost somewhere, and then to be able to communicate that with everyone in overall with the way the plane is. What first flight means to us is that the majority of the buttons are clickable. You know, everything, there's all the proof of concepts are there. So we have some sounds, we have some of everything, some of the autopilot, some of the FMC, everything is fleshed out enough that it feels like the plane. not complete yet, but enough that it's obviously an MD-11. And we're pretty much to that point. The next build after, or the next iteration after that, for us internally still, not released yet, is our quote-unquote internal build, which is when we're going to be bringing in, we have selected some members from the community that are pilots, engineers, experienced beta testers, and so on and so forth, as well as our own internal QA team. We kind of have a group selected that's going to help us do the initial polishing and feedback before it goes into any customer hands. That team will work with the internal build to help us refine it there. After that internal build, the next goalpost is the collector's edition release. We're going to, as soon as it's a stable plane and it's not going to freak out and crash potentially, or we've had issues like that right now because it's super early on in the testing process. Once we're confident that that's going to be a smooth experience, we're going to let the collectors in, let them participate in some of the feedback with us, have their voices heard while we're finishing up the development, especially as we work on things like the EFB, ACARS integration, some of the more simulation centric elements of the project, not just the realism things. And then that is sort of the beginning, quote unquote, of the beta, because that's going to be 1,000 people that we're letting in to start working on it. That's a lot of testing. So we're going to take that time, finish up anything we didn't finish, and then respond to any reports that we get during the collector's edition. After those 2 months, or when we feel that it's ready to go to general early access, we will. The general early access, although technically, again, not finished, will have now been tested twice by our QA team and again by the collectors. So it will be relatively stable. That time in the public early access will then be the end of the beta, so to speak, where we'll kind of polish it and really get it to that 1.0 rock solid state. So that's the direction that we're going there. So there won't necessarily be a unilateral beta the way that a lot of other products have. There's going to kind of be these phases and waves, which if it works the way we think, will let us get an amount of feedback that we can actually do something with that isn't overwhelming. But then as we start getting it more stable, we're expanding the sample size to continue refining the product. So all that to say that the collector's edition should start hopefully by the end of September. That should start that clock.
Awesome. Thank you for clearing that up. Our next question, well, it's 2 parts, but the first one we've really just answered. It comes from Solucas, and his second question is, will it be like the DC-6 or others that save the state of the aircraft in order to simulate degradation of the aeroplane?
If you want that, yes. Just like the 717. So the 717 had perspective. Nice. Let me try the right word here. The 717 had persistence that if you wanted this enabled, it would leave it in whatever state you had it in. So if you had ground power on and everything was aligned, ready to rock and roll, you close your sim, you come back tomorrow, it's in the same conditions. The other side of that is that it was aware of what's been happening to the plane. So we can track engine hours, we can track quality of oil, things like that. And yes, that's something that we plan to do is store some of that information and make it feel like, as long as you're flying the same tail number, of course, make it feel like that plane has had miles put on it.
Cool. Will it have smart sim rates like the PMDG?
Probably not. Is that a major feature that people need?
I've never used it. I've flown ×1, but I don't know.
We didn't have it on the 717, but the 717 also does a lot shorter flights. So I can see why maybe that wouldn't have been as popular of a request. See, that would be something that we could definitely implement later on.
Yeah.
That we'd be interested to hear feedback, I think, during the collector's edition testing and whatnot, to kind of let us know if that's something we need. Right now I say no, but we're not locked in on that.
Right, let's get some more questions then. So Taylor Broad asks, will there be a communication standard published so that we can integrate our own ACARS solution if we don't use smart cars?
No.
Okay.
No, the ACARS will be built to integrate with smart cars, and that's what it's going to be for. There will likely be a plug-in for smart cars that's compatible with the MD-11. We could do that, I guess, and create kind of a standard interface, but we'd be more likely to go the other way and create an interface that's standard for smart cars that aircraft can integrate. I think that'd probably be more the route we'd go than the other way.
And kindly asks, will it come with any liveries?
Yes. installed by default, no. But we do have a whole host of liveries that Miguel has been working on that will be available, I believe, at launch day. As far as I know, they'll be available on day one. Not every variant ever, obviously. There are certainly special liveries and variations that we don't have. But the idea is that the majority of real-world operations should be able to be simulated on day one. We don't want to do what we did with the 717, where it's weeks before there's any paints available. It was strange. So we want to get it right this time.
Okay, Morst asks CPDLC from Hoppy, so I assume he's asking, will it be sort of usable with the CPDLC features?
I'm going to turn this over to the Fabio and Yona, because I'm pretty sure they would both kill me if I said we're not doing CPDLC.
Yeah,
Yes.
I for sure would. So yes, it will have it, because if it doesn't, something has gone horribly, horribly wrong.
And that particular area will likely fall under Fabio, because he's working on a lot of the integration with third-party things. So you'll have that fun assignment. It can't be that bad. I know we need to look into it more. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to do any research into it yet. I know I haven't.
No, not at all. But I know it's quite well established. There are plenty of other aircraft that do it, so it will not.
Oh yeah, it's totally doable. Yeah, it's definitely doable. Now we'll have that. Yeah, I think now just a case of figuring out what it looks like in the MD-11.
Okay.
Yeah, going from the manuals, that's going to be educated guessing.
Yeah, there's certain details that are always going to be a little bit of approximations.
So our next question is, are we on track for shared flight deck? Will it be on both P3D and MSFS? And he also said he knows that it's not expected on initial release. So how
I
are
was
we
going to
doing
say,
on
so
flight deck?
yes, I'd release no. The thing about CFD for us is that it requires us to. So we have two paths that we can possibly take. One of them is forge our own solution, like we did with the 717. It worked more or less. It had some issues, but it worked. So that's one option. And then I'm pretty sure I have come up with a way that we can do a similar level of shared cockpit in MSFS to what we did in P3D, but I have yet to test it. So I don't want to say with absolute confidence, so yes, it'll be available this time, whatever. Because that's option one. Option number two is that we integrate with another existing solution. I know there's a couple of shared cockpit technologies emerging right now, some of which are cross-platform. So it's a compelling argument for us to want to support an existing platform, not only for the sake of letting a full feature solution be tested by someone else, but also not creating yet another standard. So some of those questions are going to be hard to answer for us as far as shared cockpit, because we need to see what's actually possible and what the best solution is going forward. I anticipate having it, but exactly what format it will appear in and at what time I can't confirm yet.
Actually, because we had a conversation some while ago where we said we didn't want to concede on things like the cockpits unsynchronizing, which happens with some of the current available cockpit solutions. So
absolutely, yeah, that's the kind of stuff we won't do. If we can't have, it should be like a multiplayer game where you just join the session and you're good. You know, If you join an online game with your friend, you don't both have to start the game and do the exact same steps and walk out of the house at the same time to keep your games in sync. So we don't want to make you have to have that kind of experience with the plane either. And if we're not able to achieve that with the current technology, we make our own. But of course, that takes more time.
Yeah. Okay, so White Ginger asks, do we have an idea on how we're going to be using everyone's unique numbers? So for the collector's edition, like, would it be used for a unique livery? So how their numbers going to be displayed, or how they're going to?
It would be difficult for us to make 1,000 liveries that we would send out. Number two, nothing would prevent somebody from just copying and pasting the livery. I know that we intend to have once the licensing system is hooked up and we kind of have a little more of that knowledge. I know at least somewhere in the FMC and little details like that, you'll have some indication of it. One of the things I've heard talked about is that having like the certificate appear somewhere in the cockpit. We're open to things like that, but something like that, as always, we could do during the collector's edition testing as well. That's something we probably want to work with the collectors to see what they want and find a place that makes sense for the product as well. But yes, we'd like to have something that of course, we want to show our support for the collectors as well, and make sure that there's something in the cockpit that reminds them how much we appreciate them investing in the project.
Okay, and I think that says what's it? Asks, will the EFB have full calculators? They can calculate runway lengths required and V1, VR, V2, basically similar to the EFB that you find in the Phoenix.
Yeah, so it'll obviously have its performance calculations. That's kind of a given for the FB. It'll also have some other features that obviously we're still in very early stages of the FB. We're kind of just talking about the design choices that we're making. We recently asked the collectors what kind of style of EFB they wanted to kind of see, and that influenced kind of the direction that we're taking. But it's still in very early stages, but it will have performance calculations.
So I think that the direction that we've been taking it to has it in a more technical, I think, format. We're going to be really careful not to make it overly difficult to use. But we have some cool information. Like one of the things, the auto brakes on this plane are pretty predictable as far as how long they take. So we got lucky in a couple of areas that we can probably help create performance calculations without too much extra hassle. I know we've also got a lot of data tables sitting around somewhere for that kind of stuff anyway. So I would think we could probably do something there, definitely. Just depends how much interpolation do you want to do in JavaScript.
We'll find out.
Okay, so one for you, Colin. Striker asks, what are your PC specs because of how good the stream looks?
Oh, I was actually about to say, it's funny you say that because my frame rate is awful right now, and I assume it's because I'm streaming it twice and also have, Discord going with 70 people and all that. But my PC specs they're decent. I mean, it's running the 2080 Ti and a Ryzen 9 here, but the frame rate itself is actually a lot better than it. I mean, if it looks good, awesome. But if anybody sees it and it seems a little low, that it is lower than it is normally just because of all the streaming stuff.
But I can confirm from testing, with a mid-tier PC, the frame rate on the MD-11 is fine.
Yeah. And
which is something I was actually initially worried about, and I'm very happy to hear that it's not an issue.
Yeah. Further to that, Fly Guy says, what do you expect the graphics and systems performance to be like?
Overall, we've been very careful with optimization, and if there are systems that are starting to cause a significant drain on performance, we address them even during development, so we don't have a great deal of optimization to do at the end. So I would expect them to be pretty good. I know one of the things we've talked about doing to help improve performance is having the option, of course, to disable certain displays or to reduce the refresh rate. We're thinking about also implementing some kind of automatic performance trimming. So if, for example, you're flying into JFK and you've got a lot of other aircraft around, you get a lot of scenery, a lot of things going on, it's really taxing the system. I'm thinking about potentially having us implement something that would automatically start lowering the refresh rate of the offside screens, automatically hide the cabin when the cockpit doors close, that kind of stuff. So you're not wasting performance. So we expect it to be pretty good. We've gone to great lengths to optimize. And given that this model, despite looking fantastic, Ozzy's done an amazing job, is actually relatively low polygon in the grand scheme of things. We didn't waste any. It has just what it needs to look right when we've been pretty optimized with the rest of the process, I think. So overall, to answer the question directly, overall I expect it to be pretty good. I'd say on par with or above the performance of other commercial aircraft simulations on the market.
Okay. Quick one. Will FSX be supported?
No.
No.
No, honestly, just the 32-bit thing alone is enough of a reason for us not to do that.
And further to that question, is the MD-11 getting P3, V5, and V6 support, or just V5?
Yeah, V5 and V6 from our perspective are similar enough that supporting both is not an issue.
Does that also include V4, being 64-bit?
I would assume so. I don't really know how big the demand for an older version of a current sim is going to be. I guess the same is kind of true with V5. V6 is still new enough that I guess there's still some transitioning time. So, I mean, it doesn't take us a great deal of changes to make it support V4, so probably, but at least V5 and V6.
And Mad Dog Infected asks, what's the project after the MD-11? Can we get a hint?
Well, it has engines. It has engines, and it carries people and/or passengers.
People
No
and
cargo?
or passengers.
And/or. That's
Confirmed
that
TFDi Design
is
glider.
technically a hint. I just thought about it. That is the vaguest hint I could have possibly given, but technically that is a slight hint. And
That's-
if somebody asks me later after it's announced, I'll tell you what I meant.
No cargo? Question mark.
I said people and/or cargo.
No, you said people and/or passengers.
Yeah, you said people.
Oh,
and
did I?
or
Yep.
passengers.
Sorry. Yes, people and/or cargo. Yep.
And engines plural.
And engines. Yes, it's not a single engine aircraft.
And the next question is a point of that caused actually a bit of an argument in our staff server the other day. Is there going to be a 2-axis flight director or the single-axis flight director?
Oh man, I'll let Yona answer this because he's responsible for the answer. So
You're gonna make me cry, honestly. No, I've after much struggling emotionally, I found some reference for the single queue flight director, and I've implemented it into the MD-11. I believe it can be seen on screen now, actually.
yes,
There it is. The dual queue flight director was already available, and Colin was great enough to implement it in the current build, and not only to implement it, but to force it on. So I am confronted with my creation every time I test.
See, I kind of forgot that I can recompile and change the settings on my side whenever I want. But if I don't provide a button to change it, it's basically my decision for everybody else for now. So while testing the single queue, I kind of just left it when I was done. I was like, all right, cool, it's finished, and moved on. And now Yona has to stare at what he will eventually come to think was a mistake eventually, I'm sure.
What do you mean eventually?
I don't get the hate for the single queue, man. I really don't. I know it's different, right? But it still works.
That works.
Right. So next question. 2 people have asked 2 very similar ones, so I'll just condense it into one. Raptor and Aviate have asked, do we have access to any MD-11 pilots or MD engineers to speak to during the design? Or is this project entirely what do we think they meant by this? And Aviate asks, what did you base the simulation off? Did anyone in the team have experience flying the MD-11? And brackets, do you have access to an MD-11 during the study phase for the development?
So we are not MD-11 pilots. No, none of our team are or have ever been MD-11 pilots. However, there is such a wealth of information that was given to us by the community. Different manuals, flight manuals, maintenance manuals, aircraft schematics, PowerPoints, training guides. By the time we're done reading all of that content, we could pass a written test on this plane, most of us. So we were ourselves are not pilots, but there is a lot of it that is up to our interpretation. We do ask pilots. We have engineers and people that we will contact and say, hey, what do you think about this? But it's the difficult part about this kind of aircraft development is that even the pilots aren't always able to answer the question because we're not asking questions like, oh, well, what appears on this screen when I push that button? The FCOM can explain that to you. A YouTube video can explain it to you. The questions that we have are, oh, what physical bus is this circuit breaker, this unlabeled circuit breaker wired to, and what impacts might that have on the system if you were to pull it? And unless you're going to get a pilot to sit there and pull random circuit breakers for several hours, which is something not a lot of operators would appreciate their pilots doing, it's really hard to get answers to those questions, even with an engineer or a mechanic sitting on the team. So we do have access to some of those people, but the vast majority of it is watching real content, reading the manuals, cross-referencing with other maintenance manuals and things, and kind of trying to work out the middle ground. And this is actually what Yona has helped us do recently. Is we've been sitting there and I'll read it and say, okay, how do we think this works? And I'll kind of give my view of it. He'll read the manual, he'll look at the schematics, kind of give me his view, and we'll kind of try to find that middle ground until we both go, yes, this makes sense. It checks all the boxes, all the conditions that the airplane lists, must be met are met. Then we say it works correctly. And then, of course, it's going to be pending testing and feedback from our collectors and QA people, which do include experts in the area.
Yeah. So I'd say it is somewhat true that it is up to our interpretation of the manuals, but they are real MD manuals, and we are very nitpicky about getting it right, our interpretation of it.
Oh yeah, very true.
Yes. Like just the other day we were talking about the fuel system, and we sat there so that the fuel pumps have a relay that if they're dry pumping, they'll eventually just cut themselves off after a couple of minutes so they don't burn the pumps out. But it only happens in manual mode. And we must have spent 5 or 10 minutes just talking about how that would be possible. And I don't mean from a case of, oh, like, how do we code it? Like, that wasn't a problem. We knew how we were going to code it right away. The discussion was, is it a physical relay? Is it a gate inside the controller? Is it a digital switch that the fuel system controller toggles on and off? And these are the kind of discussions we have. So when we finally say, yes, this is how it works, you can follow along. We don't have to code it to make the alerts pop up when they're supposed to. That's kind of what I mean. We set it up in a way that the rest of the systems naturally get their side effects right when something happens, and that's our feedback that we got to write. But we'll argue about little tiny details like that because we're not the people that built the plane. We have to kind of work out how it really was.
Okay, and the next question is, will we be releasing both the PIP and the pre-PIP models of the MD-11?
No. Finding the difference between the PIP and non-PIP versions that's very difficult to do, number one. And number two, they're not really labeled. So if you get a manual from an operator, let's say, with a bunch of performance tables, they don't necessarily specify, oh, well, this aircraft had the following performance options. Most of them toward the later end of their lives had all of the performance options anyway, to my knowledge, or at least the vast majority. So odds are a lot of the information we have is for PIP variants, and we're not really going to dig too much deeper into that. I personally don't feel that there's much of a need for it.
Okay.
Again, for the option, of course, the PIP stuff themselves is implemented. I just want to specify there.
Okay, the next question is the whole plane, in brackets, engine models, etc., built outside of the respective simulators, or do some components rely on base sim elements?
So it's kind of a bit of both. Yeah, it's kind of a bit of both. We don't run any external applications, so there's no external EXE or anything else you have to worry about opening. The code itself is all running, quote unquote, within the simulator. However, the vast majority of all of our code is custom. So what we'll do, for example, the fuel system. The fuel system is entirely custom done. It doesn't rely on the transfer or like the built-in cross-feeding or pumps or anything in MSFS. They're completely unrelated. What our code does is it calculates it by itself, says this is how it works based on the other plane systems and the way the plane is meant to be. And then when we're done, we'll say, okay, cool, we now have our fuel tank values. We just write that value back to the sim. So as a user, it feels like a built-in plane. You use it with the regular menus. You can open it up without having to run any extra programs. Xbox support is potentially on the table. It feels integrated and native, but the actual systems themselves are pretty much completely custom and correct. So it's kind of both. It relies on the simulator to host it, but the plane in and of itself is more or less self-contained.
Okay, and one that I think is going to be a big question for the community, and myself included in that, are we going to have a proper pause at top of descent?
What does proper mean? That implies that there's an improper.
Well, I assume to MSFS, and it'll be the pause so the non-active pause, the solid pause, if you will.
As long as I have the ability to do that, yes. So far in code, I have not actually had anything that can pause MSFS correctly. Smart Cars is able to do the developer pause thing. It's a little weird. That's why we added the unpause button. But I'm not sure. We will be able to do a pause at top of descent, yes. I don't know which pause it will use. I'm going to try to make it the right one. It feels comfortable. But honestly, it's a very small detail. Pause at top of descent is quite literally something we can add in 15 minutes. So stuff like that will very likely be some of the last stuff we add, just because of its relative size to the rest of the project.
And Tim asks, what about an autosave system in case of sim crashes?
Probably not. I don't see that being on the horizon right now. Again, I mean, we're open to discuss, but at least at the moment, that's not on the plans. You would notice it. That's one of the reasons, by the way, is you would notice it doing that. In order to save all the system states and everything and all the flight states, I mean, there's a good amount of information that's got to be written, and odds are you might notice it pausing to do that. And I don't know that would be the ideal situation. And I mean, hopefully the sims will continue to get more stable, and the need to restart a flight halfway through will become less. That's the goal, right?
Yeah. Okay. So, it's quite an interesting question. Are there any core team members testing the plane in VR? And so, by extension, will the aircraft work in VR?
Yes. So it's funny we mentioned this. I just had it in VR for the first time the other day. I just got randomly decided to pull out the Oculus and give it a try. So it does work. I'm not, as far as like testing in VR. I mean, it's a plane in VR. It behaves, as far as flying it in VR, pretty similarly to other aircraft in VR. I'm not sure exactly what we're looking for there, but yes, it even currently has been tested. The screens show up. It looks more or less correct. You know, things make sense. So at least as a sanity check, if nothing else, it's been in VR.
Okay. And Skronix asks, is there going to be Simbrief integration?
Yes. Yeah, there's no way we could not. I've seen how cool that is to have everything just kind of integrated after working with smart cars for the last couple of months. Obviously not now, but this year at least I have worked on it. And after seeing how awesome it is to have it just kind of built right into your workflow, yeah, I will definitely. It probably would be in Fabio's area, though. I think you're doing that more in the tablet, right?
Yeah, there will be parts of it that are in the tablet, and obviously there will be integration between the EFB and the plane to make sure that like you can definitely like get the flight plan in, etc.
Company routes.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, I still have it. We're gonna have fun with that.
Next question then is, will cargo be shown in the back of the aircraft once it's loaded?
Yes, definitely. There will be something shown. There's been discussion about whether it's just going to be pallets or it's going to be more customizable, kind of selectable things, or what exactly is going to appear back there. But there will absolutely be something. Yeah, it will not just be an empty hold.
Yep. And then McDaniel asks, what can we expect from the cargo version? Will there be cargo loading, and then maybe something in the future to do with GSX Pro?
How do you do that? That's what I want to know. The whole because I've seen GSX where it loads the cargo into the plane, and then you actually physically see it remain in the aircraft. I'm not sure from a technical perspective if anybody knows. Is it
It's
just that they have their own
door locations?
Yeah.
And
Is
then I think there might be something that we could perhaps listen to that will tell us once like a pallet is loaded,
yeah, like
and then we can just
I would-
render that.
I'd obviously assume that with what they announced when we were at Expo, with their ability to see passengers in the cabin, perhaps the cargo will be similar to that. But that would be my that'd be my 20p's worth.
Yeah, I'm really not sure. Like, we're gonna do something with that. As far as like ground vehicles, I know that GSX adds a lot of integration, it adds a lot of immersion for a lot of people when they get to see all the ground vehicles interacting with the aircraft, and especially when it actually loads something in and out. That's a really cool factor to have as part of the plane. So I think we're gonna do our best to try to have some integration there. But again, integrating with third-party software is definitely gonna come toward the later end of, and I mean probably some of the last stuff we'll do, because the plane itself needs to work correctly before we can worry about it working with GSX. That's why some of our answers are hopeful but vague, because it's not that it's low priority, it's that the fuel system and the auto flight is a higher priority than GSX cargo loading.
Yeah. Well, that brings on actually to the next question: is will the plane have a custom fuel system?
Oh, it already does.
There we go. That was a nice answer, wasn't it?
Yes. The fuel system, and I know I can assume that the question is because of the insane complexity of the MD-11's fuel system that is just not present in MSFS, with the whole tail fuel management and automatic CG control and all that. It's got a really complex fuel system, which I've had the great pleasure of reading the descriptions of over and over again for the last week or so as I've been working on it. But it does have some really cool stuff that it can do, and yes, so will ours.
All
It
right.
had to be custom.
And then the next one is, will engine smoke be simulated, particularly with the Pratt & Whitney engine variant?
Is this like startup smoke?
I don't want it to be in-flight engine smoke.
Well, I mean, but the thing is, like with the extended simulation package, like engine fire and smoke is definitely something that might happen too. But
Well,
Go
if I
ahead.
might jump in, I believe what they may be referring to, the Pratt & Whitney variant of the MD-11 wasn't known, especially I believe the high power one. If you set toga, and I mean like full power, that there would be some smoke already producing from the engine then, because it didn't run.
Oh,
rapidly.
okay.
Like
Oh, fair enough.
Just
Just 90s smog. I can see it now. As far as the visual elements of things like that, I am undecided on what level of special effects we're going to create, because we have to decide where to draw the line. Because if you remember the 717, the FSFX packages, they had an entire suite of things with precipitation dripping off control surfaces, spray and smoke from tires and rain and weird conditions. And there's a lot of awesome integration there, and again, really immersive stuff. But that's its whole own thing. They did it as their own project, separate from the plane. So I'm not against it. I think we should return to that discussion. I think maybe more focused as we get toward the special effects period of the development here toward the very end, and revisit that discussion to see if we need to do it, because it sounds like we might. If it's a trait that the plane is known for, it sounds like it's something we should consider.
Yeah. Okay, and I know we've sort of touched on this, but just a sort of quick yes or no answer. Will the cabin be toggleable for performance reasons? So can you select
Yes.
to not have the cabin in the back?
Yeah, you could select to just not have it at all. And what I'm thinking about doing is having that when the cockpit door is open, the cabin is visible, but when it's closed, it'll just hide itself. So you won't have the performance impact while you're flying, but then you can have the ground ops where you can walk around and experience the cabin if you'd like. Again, this will be an option. So if you would like to sit in it while you're cruising and experience the passenger view because you got the performance to spare, go for it. But we want to make it accessible. But yes, the short answer is yes, it will be toggleable if you don't want to waste the performance on it. Although it really doesn't, at least in MSFS, it doesn't seem to have a huge impact on the performance, which is nice.
Okay. So we've had two people ask the same thing, is there a way we can have a look at the P3D variant?
Today, no. So the code is the same, but the model has to be re-exported, and we've been focusing a lot on the MSFS version because it lagged behind a lot in the beginning. However, there have been a ton of streams where we've shown off the plane progressing in P3D. It will, of course, look better in MSFS. I'm not going to even attempt to say that they'll look the same. They don't. The quality of the work is the same, of course, but the engine is just not, the simulator engine itself is just not capable of rendering it the same. Yeah. So today, no, it's not going to be possible, but we will, of course, have screenshots and pictures marked as such in both added to the product page at some point. It just wasn't a priority. The main goal right now is MSFS because it was, like I said, the one that lagged so far behind.
And Josh asks, is there a chance we can see the night lighting, if that's how that's coming along?
No, we can't, because we do. I guess MSFS is a little different, so we will be adding some of the dynamic lights, but at least in P3D, we have to bake all the night lighting textures, which means that the texturing must be 100% finished, because adding one single screw requires the entire cockpit lighting to be rebaked, which takes like 20 hours or something ridiculous like that. So that will, like everything else, be the very last thing we do. That one will genuinely likely be the very last we do as far as adding, before we start working on the third-party integration and whatnot. That'll be the very last step, because we want to make sure we're tweaking that and redoing that gigantic bake process as infrequently as possible.
McDaniel asks, how much work has been put into the Wingflex simulation, fuel state and turbulence, etc.?
Wingflex, not a whole lot has been put into that yet. And what was the other half of it?
Fuel state and turbulence.
Are we talking about like just fuel getting trapped in tanks or whatever? I mean, I'm not sure what
I don't know
we're talking about there. Again, I mean, not a lot. I mean, it'll fly through turbulence. I'm not. If the question is specifically about the impact of turbulence on like fuel tank storage, I'm not
Daniel,
sure.
if you want to tag me and just make that a bit clearer in the chat, we can ask it now. You can see your tag.
It's the impact on. Yeah, I mean, the Wingflex in a 717 was custom. We did the Wingflex custom specifically so that wings would bounce around when you're on the ground. We could have those effects that mimicked the way it felt in real life. We will likely do something similar if we get there and it turns out we need much more dramatic Wingflex than MSFS is capable of doing. We'll just animate it ourselves. That's in that case, because it's visual, is a relatively minor detail. So that's something we can definitely add later on as we get into that. I mean, obviously it's fine to have Wingflex, but if there are more advanced nuances to it that we haven't accounted for, then we'll be able to do that when we get there.
Yeah. So I've just read what he's followed it up with which does mean how the weight of the fuel and the wings affect it, especially on the ground.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I didn't realize it had that dramatic of an effect. You know what I mean? Do we have any reference for this? Do you know about this?
I know it's a thing. However, I think obtaining very accurate reference for it is going to be difficult because we would need like a video of someone fueling an MD-11 and seeing the wings flex down over time. Yeah. I think if we work with, if I'm saying the correct person, Aussie, closely, we could get an approximation of it.
I think so, yeah. It sounds like, so we need to put that on the list as well. So the engine smoke and the fuel loading, flexing the wings, we need to put both of those on the list, I guess, to review for effects.
Okay, so next question, one more about the team than it is the aircraft, but we'll go anyway. Are we full-time?
I am. I think Fabio might as well be at this point. I know Josh Riley is also full-time. But a lot of us do this as a passion project. I know all of our 3D team, they do this after their regular jobs or on weekends because they love flight simulation and they love planes and are excited to be part of it. So it's kind of a split answer.
Yeah. And Taylor Broad comes back with, regarding the smart cars integration, what features would be gained from within the MD-11?
I'm going to give that to Fabio. Fabio's been running the smart cars project recently, and he's also running the integration part of the MD-11. So I think that's going to kind of be your wheelhouse, sir.
I mean, we haven't really discussed that too deeply, but I think one of the things that comes to mind is, for example, when you load a company route and let's say your VA allows the chartering of flights, to basically instantly create that flight, and as soon as you load into the sim and start boarding, it actually starts your flight in smart cars instantly and automatically, so that you don't have to go through and click it and start it through in smart cars. I think is one of our ideas.
And I think maybe even be able to pull like a company route out of smart cars and kind of pre-fill some of your FMC stuff. I think would be nice.
Yeah, but we haven't discussed it at great length yet, mainly because our focuses are elsewhere for the supporting systems at the moment.
The goal ultimately, though, is to try to eliminate unnecessary application use and unnecessary clicks. So if we can create something where you just jump in the MD-11 and you basically don't have to leave your sim, once vPilot's connected, let's say, you can just jump in the MD-11, open smart cars, minimize it, forget about it, open vPilot, minimize it, forget about it, get in, and then control smart cars and all of your charts and planning and everything else just from within the plane. I think that's kind of the ideal scenario. We'll see if we're able to achieve that, but at least in my mind, that's kind of the goal. And yes, if any of our community moderators here are watching, if we have repeat questions, if we're able to just kind of help guide them or give them a quick summary, just so we're not going over the same thing, I'd like people to get their answers.
So, Center of Aviation is, how will the shared cockpit work? I mean, we've already answered, will there be shared cockpit, but how will we try and get it working?
Again, I mean, I don't know exactly what area the question is in reference to, but in general, we're going to do it different than the 717, and then we're going to host, I think, some kind of hubs around the world, a couple of servers, maybe like one in Europe, probably at least one American, one Asian, and then maybe one extra kind of, equally in the middle there somewhere, just so we can not have to do the whole port forwarding thing. The goal for us is that you'd get like a 6-digit code that you would be able to type into, your FMC or your EFB or whatever, however we end up doing it, that will link you to somebody else's flight, and that really should be it. At that point, you should just fly together. Our plan is to make it extremely simple, and again, that's kind of why we're not really sure what solution we're going to go with yet, because we want that kind of simplicity. But that's the goal. As far as how it's going to work, the idea should be with little effort.
Yeah.
Also, I just realized something here. I can't tell, is this wet? If you're looking at my screen, I'm sorry to derail the conversation. We've had some issues in MSFS with like clouds entering the cockpit and little things like that while we're developing it. And I'm just looking at this here, and it looks like the glare shield is wet.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's raining outside. I don't know, is it? Have to take a look at that. It does kind of look that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just happened to notice that.
Okay, so just we're pushing that we've almost been live almost an hour now, so I am mindful of the time. Papa Charlie asks, regarding the aircraft's controls, How are buttons like autopilot disconnect, auto throttle disconnect, toga done? Is it with special commands or the default sim commands? Will there be a tiller? And is there going to be support for the honeycomb panels?
Yes, so we do support tillers already. So if you have a nose wheel steering input, you can steer the nose. It won't, like right now, you'll see like I can't do it because I don't have my joystick plugged in. But if I were to plug in my my joystick, I have my twist turned to set to the tiller. You can see this thing rotating separately from the pedals. So we do have that. And I'm sorry, there was a two-part question. And the honeycomb and default integration. So yes, so it's funny you mentioned this. Actually, I finally got some honeycomb stuff, partially for my own enjoyment. I'm not gonna lie, but also partially so we could make sure that the default mapping on their stuff works with ours. The goal for us is that there is no setup process for getting hardware to work. So to answer the first half of the question, yes, the default autopilot toggle, the default auto throttle toggle will control our stuff. Not because we're using default systems. We've gone out of our way to add code via SimConnect. When you do those things in the sim, it notifies code that wants to know that you've tried to do that. We go out of our way to listen for that and integrate with it so you don't have to work. There won't be necessarily a need to have FSUI PC or SPAD or anything to do basic integration with the plane. Now you want to show custom autoflight values on, custom hardware. Yeah, you'll probably need tools for that. But something like the honeycomb, if you want to turn the landing lights on with the honeycomb rocker switch, that will work on ours. That's that kind of stuff we definitely want to make easily accessible.
Okay, next question comes from Nevermind, and it is, will all the doors work?
Oh, I thought you were messing with me. I thought you'd be like, yes, yep, never mind.
No,
I thought you were just gonna. I can't imagine why they wouldn't. I don't think we actually animated the doors yet. So we seemingly random stuff like that isn't done because it's so trivial in terms of effort required that it really is one of those. Oh, I guess we should do that, and it'll be a 10-minute conversation with Ozzy, and it's done. So yeah, the doors. I can't imagine them not working individually. That'd be silly for us to come this far with fidelity and then just lump all the doors together.
Okay, now this is just one. This is just one for me, guys. We are running close to our time now, so in the Discord chat, I'm going to keep it open for 5 minutes. So last questions you want answering, then we'll work through what we've got because we can't keep going indefinitely. So in 5 minutes time, I'm going to stop taking questions, and then we're just going to run through what we have. Because I think we're about 10 minutes behind the questions at the minute. Have we developed an EFB, and/or will we be developing an EFB?
Have we yet? No. Well, not for MSFS. We did the 717's EFB back in the day, but
yeah, EFB not made. EFB will be made.
Yeah, that's probably the best answer we can hope for.
No and yes, I like it.
Better than yes and no.
Kevin. Oh.
True.
I'm just going to watch the tumbleweed go past because that was hilarious, Fabio. Kevin asks, the way the code is written right now, does that mean an Xbox release currently is not possible?
I don't know what they require that's different for Xbox. However, our code, when it's done, compiles into Wasm. So from a purely technical standpoint, an Xbox release should be possible. I'm not going to promise that on day one because that's not our goal. And the other thing is that we're not going to hold back anything to do with the desktop simulation because of Xbox. I do have visions of having some iteration of this aircraft on the Xbox. However, will it be the full fidelity desktop simulation that we're looking at on my screen right now? Probably, maybe not. I don't know. But it will be, any Xbox release will be secondary to the PC full fidelity release that we've been working on so far. But technically it should be possible. We've gone to great lengths to try to not limit our options. So I'd like to think that we've left that one in the cards.
Okay. This isn't a question, but I thought it needs reading out. White Ginger says, damn, it looks so good.
Ozzy has outdone himself. The team in general, I'm so happy with the artwork here. I'm trying to get closer to the outside, and it's not letting me do it. Let me get some hydraulic pressure on here. We'll get some flaps deployed. We'll go get the flaps and the speed brakes and everything. there's so much detail, which is why I'm getting out there to show everybody. All right. Yeah, it's gonna have 800 alerts because like, hey, your flaps are down. You don't have hydraulic pressure. All right. How does anybody know how I actually get close enough to see anything?
Right-click mouse wheel scroll, maybe.
And you could also go into drone mode.
Ah, yes. Let me get some Nope. Let me get some flybys. I'm just as bad when I'm flying, by the way, with the menus. I pretty much sit in the cockpit view and I hardly even change. I don't even go outside most of the time. I don't like the view system just doesn't make sense to me.
Right. And whilst you're working out, we'll take another question. Is that Mr. Sprouse, I want to say? Bruce Sprouse? Will it have terrain radar? He understands that the weather radar isn't possible at the minute until the Bing Map solution is used. He says, but most devs have been able to do a terrain radar with a preloaded database. So will the MD-11 have a terrain radar?
I will look into it. I also realized recently that the FAA publishes an obstacles database as well. So that's something else we can look into. We'll look into the data-driven solutions. The version of the terrain radar that we used in P3D was actually, it scanned the terrain in front of you. It was actually genuinely a radar, so to speak, because it obtained that data from what was nearby to the aircraft based on the scenery. Really cool, really complex system that is completely incompatible with MSFS. So we will look into the data-driven options. It's actually something I can put on the list here to kind of spend some time looking at today, just so I have an answer. Actually, we'll do it.
Right. Someone's asked about Wingflex engine pylon vibrations, which we've sort of already answered that.
Oh, the vibrations I should have thought about. Yeah, I'll put that on my list as well.
Hello, Moto. How are you today? So give some little shout out. And next question comes from Tissam again. Could you make a pilot add-on that you can turn on and off when you fly, so there's a pilot you can see in the co-pilot seat?
From the cockpit or from the external? Because I think from the external we'll have some kind of pilot model, I would assume. Again, my terrible view control here, I can't get to it, but he's in there. So I think no, they're not. There's nothing in there right now. But yeah, I'm not sure that we do that in the cockpit. That you end up in the uncanny valley really easy with stuff like that, I've found. So sometimes I think it's easier to just have it be an empty cockpit. Again, it's something that we're open to discuss, I suppose, in the future. But at this moment, it's probably not something we're going to spend a lot of effort on.
Colin, if you want to go into the drone cam, hit insert on your keyboard. You can have a free cam around there. And then with your numpad arrows, you can hover around.
Okay.
And WASD, you can kind of move around the plane.
Okay.
Wow,
Moto
perfect.
asks, are we going to make the flight deck look used, so make it look a bit older, so it's not like it's come out of the factory?
It does actually have some signs of wear and tear and use currently, but yes, we will. The plan is absolutely to have, I think initially was to have two options, where we have some kind of a really dirty, very lived in sort of feel, and then have a more cleaned up, newer kind of look. So we definitely will. It will definitely feel used, and they said there may very well be an option for it. Trying to descend with the camera here. I don't know how to do it.
Foxtrot, descent with Foxtrot on your
Will
keyboard.
there be sunshades in the cockpit? So will there be sun visors you can drag around, or come up out of the panels like in 737?
I would assume so. Yeah, I mean they're physically in the cockpit. We can animate them definitely. I see like the center gear is in the ground there, but
Already in QA reports.
yeah, even here you can
I've
see
just
it.
closed down the questions, so we're just going to run through what we've got left. So I assume it'll be another 10-15 minutes from now.
I'll say so. We can keep right on trucking in the meantime.
Yeah. So, is there going to be an option to dump fuel?
Yes.
Cool.
That's an easy
Yes,
answer.
I thought
Yes.
there was a bit. I thought there was going to be a little bit more coming
Nope.
to that.
It's a relatively straightforward system from what I've been able to see. So the buttons will work. Give it a dump fuel. Yes.
Okay, this one has come from Twitch. Will we have support for MSFS 2024, Microsoft Flight Sim 24, whatever it's going to be called?
Yes,
And
I
will it be a
believe
free
so.
upgrade?
I'm not. I can't imagine why it wouldn't be. The only reason that it wouldn't be a free upgrade would be if we had to do some massive amount of work to make it compatible. From what I've had a chance to speak with some of the people at Asobo, and I've been assured that it will not require us to redo the project. So, assuming that that is true and that it is the way that I think it is, it will be available or compatible. Yes, and it should not be a paid upgrade. Yeah, it should be free.
Okay. Say, approximately how many weeks from now until the collector's editions? Excuse me, until the collector's edition owners see their version. Just I don't.
But a
think
max
sort
of
of
what, 8 weeks? We're thinking.
Yeah, said end of September by the very, very max. Which is what I
As
think
you
what
can
we're saying
see,
in
it,
Expo.
yes. Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at my screen now, you hopefully will see that the once dead cockpit that we were using to show off potential has now got systems. There's, I just sort of stuff. Yeah, I don't know if you can hear it on my stream, but it's actually doing the fire alerts. It's pretty far along now. It is an MD-11 now.
I notice you've changed your name. So Felix Feltersnatch, will icing be available? Sorry, be visible on some of the default. Sorry, will icing be visible like some of the default third-party MSFS add-ons? So
I
will
would
we see the
assume
icing?
Like visually, do we know? Does it have an impact on the flight characteristics
Ice.
in the sim? Obviously, in real
Uh,
life it does. In the sim, does it?
I think there's an option that you can either have it affect the flight dynamics, just be visual, or neither.
Okay, then we need to look into that. So right now, I can't give you a definitive answer because we need to do some research into that. That's one of those things that didn't exist in P3D, so honestly, it really wasn't a huge consideration for us. We will look into that and try to support it.
Okay, Nevermind is back with another question. Do the window wipers work?
Currently, no. I don't. Do they?
No.
No. Okay, so currently, no, they don't, but they will.
The switch isn't even oriented correctly currently.
No, it's not, is it?
Turns the wrong way, and it's.
I noticed that. That doesn't really look right, does it? But yeah, I mean, they will, yes. As far as will they work at wiping the rain off the windshield, I don't think MSFS even lets us do that, and True Glass would be basically impossible in MSFS. So I don't know that the wipers will actually clear the screen. I'm not sure that we even can do that.
MSFS does have wiping. It's just, yeah, like it does exist.
If it exists, we'll look into it, definitely.
Okay, and Felix is back. What kind of documentation are we going to provide to people? Will there be an FCOM or a QRH?
Neither. We're just going to throw you in head first and say good luck.
Yep, what he said.
No, we're going to have documentation. If you saw the way that the 717s was, I would figure we're probably going to take a similar format, but obviously with a bit more detail, given that this plane has a lot more options and non-standard procedures. But I would say if you go to the docs.invernix.com and take a look at that, where the 717s is laid out, it would probably be something similar. As well, we will provide full systems documentation that actually explains how they work, and then a kind of an abridged quick start guide if you just want to jump in and get flying and teach you the bare minimum you need to operate it. We'll try to make, and we're also working with content providers as well to create YouTube material and training material that you can use to learn the product better and get comfortable with the plane.
Kevin asks, are you sure we can't keep going indefinitely?
I'm pretty sure, because if I
think so
spend the rest of the week doing this, it means I didn't spend the rest of the week coding it, and then I don't think you guys would be as happy with us.
Next question comes from Striker. Can you show us some sounds?
I cannot. We are working with TSS for engine sounds, and he has his work kind of progressing on his own vein, separate from us. So the only sounds I have right now is I have the cause alerts for the majority of the built-in stuff. So fire, takeoff warnings, that kind of stuff. I can show you that, but I can't do a lot more with other systems and sounds right now. We will, of course, have custom engine sounds. If you know TSS, you know the quality of work. I would expect that this would be no exception to their quality of work. They made the 717 sounds as well, and it was great. So I'm confident that the audio experience will be good.
Craig asks, what liveries are you expecting on release, and will we see a paint kit either shortly after release, on release, or shortly before?
There will be a paint kit, absolutely, and honestly, the list of liveries is way too long. I will get it wrong if I try to guess, but I think Miguel said something. We had north of 30 liveries, I think, total out of the gate. So it's a pretty comprehensive list. But unfortunately, I don't have the exact list right in front of me, and I don't want to say yes, we have that when we don't.
Yeah. Okay. Magic Eagles with persistent wear and failures, will it be possible to label systems as inop in the flight deck for an MEL release?
You mean label physically, as in put a sticker on and have it visually represented, or just have a failed system that you fly with?
I'm not
we had
entirely
this
certain,
conversation.
Magic, if you're still here, do you want to just tag me and just explain a little bit further so we can get you an answer?
I had a conversation with him personally, pretty short while ago. I believe he means label in the virtual cockpit with a inop sticker.
It would just be a case of us knowing which systems in advance are going to have that option. Because we can't dynamically place the sticker randomly. We have to kind of know in advance where it can be and have it set up already there and textured and have the night lighting adjusted. And that's the other thing with the night lighting too. We got to factor that in. So we could do it, absolutely. But I think it comes down to how often did that really happen and how big of an impact is that really going to have on the overall experience. And I think those questions will kind of shape whether or not we're able to do that or what capacity we would do it to. Again, maybe something worth a discussion later on to see if it's something we're still able to do. But as of right now, I don't plan to spend time on that particular feature. I do appreciate the cool factor of it, but I think that right now it's going to be a lower priority thing, definitely. If we were to do it, it would be low priority.
Okay. MiG41 Flatpack asks, do you guys input the fuel and payload via an add-on manager, such as the 717, or will it be done through the EFB and/or CDU?
It will likely be via the EFB. I think we're trying to support fuel loading via the built-in menu, but obviously that may not work. And let me put it this way. It would be the EFB and the built-in menu. It would not just be the built-in menu. I know it'll be part of the EFB, at least. So we'll stick with that answer for now.
Right. Let's see. Do we have any more? Stud says his question got missed earlier. I'm really sorry if we missed you. Will we be able to interact with the FMC using a tablet or other mobile device? And will it be app or browser based? So will you be able to connect to it via your phone, I assume, and turn your phone into a FMC?
I am not going to do that. No, but there are third-party solutions that do this. The Remote CDU company is one of them. We will make that possible. So we will export the MCDU data in a format that those third-party services can use to make it accessible, but we're going to rely on one of those third-party services to actually make that app available. That's not something we're going to do first party.
Right. That was the last question. Before I closed out the questions, do you want to have a look through, see if there's any pertinent really, really pertinent ones that have been asked that we haven't gone over already?
Let's take a scroll here.
So if you go to, I've said questions closed, it'll be something 32. But I don't think there's much.
I've got a list of Twitch followers to read out while you guys look for that.
Yep.
So in order we have Wassa_everyday, Lilamix, XStrikerHH, Kevo_Desu, Prozac27, iOS Scotsman, Whatsits_Nevermind1982, Mariner _Haley, Dr. Martin 18, Schlag1K, and Motosuwa_. Thank you very much for following the Twitch. It's the best way to make sure that you never miss one of these dev streams.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so just to add to the question about the EFB and the apps, will the EFB be published as an app available for mobile devices?
Probably not.
I was gonna say, yeah, probably not going to do that. It'll be available in the aircraft itself. Although that does make me wonder, would that be something we'd be able to put on your local device? Oh no, because we can't host a web server in MSFS. There's no way.
No. So it's going to
no
just
way.
have to be whilst I'm in the sim, sadly.
Unless we integrate, how are we going to communicate from the tablet to the sim? Because if we use SimConnect to do it, we can do SimConnect externally, and we could actually host it. That one we could either have internal or outside of the sim, and it could be either way, and then have the outside one send the stuff back to the sim. You could actually do that on the tablet that way.
We'll have to investigate. So obviously,
Worth
started
discussing.
it, right? So that's the
It's
thing.
going to go on the list.
Well, I think that's everything then. Unless any questions in Twitch that have come in that we've missed.
I mean, there's been Twitch. I'm sure you've been looking at it. I don't think there's anything else.
There's not much that's been asked in Twitch that hasn't been asked in Discord.
Yeah.
Other than have we 3D scanned the real thing?
No.
I mean, that'd be pretty impressive. I know somebody asked if they can hear Bitch and Betty, so I reshared just MSFS here, so we can actually do that. Go in and get our fire test.
Just so you know, stream won't be able to hear it. I don't believe.
Which
All right.
Oh, they can.
Engine 1, fire. Engine 2, fire. Engine 3, fire. Engine 1, fire.
stabilizer motion.
Then we got, yeah, of course you get the
Flap. Flat.
lap.
Flap.
There's a little bug I noticed. The alerts are being inhibited by the throttle push, which it shouldn't be because the engines are off. You shouldn't do it now.
Flap.
Either way, there's some of those. The autopilot one is also. It might do it. Yep.
Autopilot.
I was like, I want to see if it's dumb enough to let me do it on the ground. Then it is. I need to fix that. But yeah, there's some of the at least the system's alerts.
Right, and actually a question that I think we should answer is engine numbering. Which way does it go from left to right? What's 1, 2, and 3?
The middle engine is 2. Left engine is 1. Middle engine is 2. Right engine is 3.
Right. Okay, I think that's all the questions that we've had. Thank you all for coming, guys. Anyone got any last things they want to say to the people who've come to the chat and the stream? Other than
As
say
always-
thank you.
I was gonna say, as always, I want to say thank you everybody for their support and their interest in the project. Getting to do this sort of stuff and even being able to host these streams and see how many people are excited to interact with us and excited about the project, it helps keep us motivated. It's been really awesome to have such a supportive community working with us over the last couple of months, with the collectors chat, and now even more people kind of coming in and getting involved. It's been really cool. We're really excited about it, and I just want to say thank you from where I sit for getting to do this and being part of the community. Guys, I'll turn it over to you guys if you have anything you want to add.
I just want to say that if you guys have any questions, we have the Ask staff, we have the ability to open up tickets in Discord. Anyone just feel free to ask. It's always better to ask the question because it can provoke some thought for us as well. You might think something we haven't thought of yet.
I was gonna say one takeaway I'd like to leave everybody with is if you watch the way we interact today during the stream, with some of the discussions that we had, these aren't scripted. Me joking around about, I'll see if the plane's dumb enough to let me do this, or talking to Fabio about, hey, can we do this? Those are genuine discussions. So sometimes these streams help us. They're helpful for us to have these interactions with the community and our followers and customers and fans. That's as important to us as it is to you sometimes, because we use that as an opportunity to grow ourselves and to hear ideas that we never would have thought of on our own. So like I said, those conversations are not scripted. that's genuinely us learning and going, wow, yeah, it's something we should talk about. So that helps us a lot.
Yona, you have anything to add, or?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, well, if that's everything, guys, I think we'll leave it here.
Alrighty, as always, we appreciate it, and we will catch you at the next one.
Right. We'll see you all soon. Thanks for coming, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.